Welcome and thank you for standing by. All participants are in listen-only mode. Today's webinar is being recorded and the recording will be posted publicly. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. Now I would like to turn the call over to your host, Yara McSweeney.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar about Puerto Rico, English version. My name is Yara McSweeney, and I am a program analyst at the Census Bureau. I want to thank you for joining us today at the Back to Data Basics webinar series. This webinar series was created by our Census Academy team here at Census Bureau. You can register for any of the webinars by using census.gov/academy. Before I introduce today's speaker, let's just go over a few housekeeping items. As I mentioned earlier, this webinar is being recorded. For your convenience, it will be posted to our Census Academy site within 30 business days. We'll also post all supplemental materials, including the PowerPoint slides. In terms of how to ask questions during the webinar, you can submit your written questions using the Q&A panel, which is at the bottom center or the right side of your WebEx screen. Please take a moment to locate that now. Once you've found the Q&A panel, make sure you choose All Panelists from the drop-down menu. This will ensure we see your question. Also, we ask that you do not include any personal or business identifiable information with your questions. My colleagues, Noelia and Carol, will be monitoring the Q&A panel. As time allows, they will answer your questions directly to the Q&A panel, or they will read them out loud to our presenter after her presentation. For any questions that are not answered, feel free to contact us at the contact information we'll provide later. Now let's talk a little bit about the chat panel. Look for this right next to the Q&A panel. Keep the chat panel open because this is where we will provide you with helpful links and other resources. Keep in mind, you won't be able to respond to the chat. Chat is just for us to send you links, including our evaluation. So of course, as you know, we are in virtual environment and sometimes technical difficulties might occur. If you are having issues, try a different browser or consider logging out and coming back into the session. Lastly, throughout the webinar, a link where you can tell us how we did today will be provided in the chat. We are very interested in hearing how we're doing. Okay, so with all of those administrative items out of the way, I now like to introduce you today's speaker, Ana Maria Garcia. Thanks for being here, Ana Maria. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Yara. It's my pleasure to be here with you. So, as you've heard, I am Ana Maria Garcia. I've worked for the Census Bureau a little bit over 21 years. During that time, I've held several positions. I started as a partnership specialist in the Boston region and then moved on to become the local census office manager in Hartford. I became a partnership coordinator in the New York region and then a data dissemination specialist, which I currently hold that position, still with the New York regional office. And what I'm charged with is providing instruction both to community groups, to staff of elected officials, particularly new staff that join elected officials' offices, government agencies which are interested in the data that we have, and the general public. And you are users, those persons who are interested in census data. Since I am bilingual, I provide instructions both in English and in Spanish. Today's will be in English, and on Thursday we'll do one in Spanish. And I'm responsible for the following geography: Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Puerto Rico. And occasionally we'll partner with my colleagues to provide instruction to community groups in New York State, or possibly further up in the New England states. So that's me in a nutshell. And what I want to do is share with you some of the objectives that I thought about providing you with in this presentation. So the first thing I want you to leave with is an understanding of census data. We're not going to get to your understanding and knowing all of the data that we have. We're not going to do that today, I promise you. But I will give you an overview of where some of that data is located so that you can have it as a font of information for yourself. I then want to compare the American Community Survey and the Puerto Rico Community Survey, known as La Encuesta de la Comunidad de Puerto Rico, but we know it inside of the Bureau as the Puerto Rico Community Survey. And I want to show you the nuanced differences in the questions that are asked. And then I want to do a crosswalk between geography in the United States and in Puerto Rico. And if you're looking for a municipio in Puerto Rico, where you would look for it on our tools. And then the agenda. The agenda will mirror our objectives. We're going to do a census data overview, as I told you. We're going to go over some census geography, particularly the geography that's created by the Census Bureau, and I'll speak to that when we get to that slide. I want to share with you some differences and different purposes between a decennial census, the American Community Survey, and the Puerto Rico Community Survey. We'll talk about some online tools and resources, and then we're going to do an actual live demo of some of the data tools that will have been mentioned throughout this presentation. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's do this census data overview. So, if you look at this slide at the bottom right, it's our mission. We want to serve as the nation's leading provider of quality data about its people and economy. We do that every single day. That is our mission and the purpose that we carry out. And we actually conduct 130 surveys, so a little bit more, throughout the year. People have no idea that we carry out that function. We do surveys for other federal agencies. They're the sponsors of that survey. We collect the data and then hand them the data, and they produce the results. We now have some links on our own website so that people can see the connection between them and have an easy access to getting some of that data. But we do three primary censuses or surveys that we are known for. That first one is the decennial census. We do a decennial census every 10 years, the years ending in 0. We've been doing them since 1790. We've amassed over the years some expertise on collecting that data. We've also, in our questions and in the format, have reflected the changes that have taken place within our society. So we no longer ask the question, for instance, do you have a radio in your home? That's not a question that we ask. And when we're going to change a question, we've got to take that to some Congress, because Congress is the one who actually approves a question. We gather some data that will support the change in the question, but the final decision is made by Congress. And so that decennial census is quite important for us and has lots of data. The next one is the American Community Survey. If some of you are on this call, remember back in the 2000 census, there was a short form and a long form. The short form asked some brief demographic questions like your name, your age, your race, like that. And then we had this long form. And when we called it a long form, we meant it was a long form. We had over 60 questions and quite a bit of detail. Users came to us at the Bureau and said, you know, this is really rich data, but you produce it, you know, every 10 years in your decennial census. Our communities are changing much more rapidly than this, so that when the time comes to produce this data, it's outdated for us. Is there any way that you can collect this data more frequently? We took that into consideration, held some focus groups, and decided in 2005 to pull out the long form from the decennial census and created the American Community Survey. So now it's a survey that stands alone and is conducted every single month. And then we have the economic census. Distinct from the decennial census counts our population and our housing units. The economic census gives us a picture of how our economy is doing, how many establishments we have, what's the payroll of those establishments, the number of employees, the race of employees, the race of owners of establishments. So it really gives us a sense of our economy. And the economic census, distinct from the decennial census, is conducted every 5 years, years ending in 2 and years ending in 7. So those are three large censuses and surveys that we carry out. And I wanted you to get a sense of that because much of our data we're going to find within one of these. Now let's look at some census geography. Geography is very important for us here at the Census Bureau. Geography drives how we collect data and how we build it all up to get to the national level. So this slide does not by any stretch of the imagination provide you with all of our census geography. It doesn't do that. But what I think is important about this slide is looking at the spine of this slide. Look at the center, and you can get data at the national level all the way down to the census block level. But you can only get census block level data when we have a decennial. All other times, the lowest geography we have is a block group. So let me go through these. So you see that under nation, we have regions. We have 4 regions in the United States. You can get data at the regional level. You can get data for any one of our states. You can get data for any one of the counties in this country. And for counties, when we're looking at geography for Puerto Rico, those are our municipios. So I'm going to show you when we go to retrieve some data that it'll say counties, but that's what you're going to click on if you're looking for a municipio of Puerto Rico. Underneath that is your census tract. People know about our census tracts. And so census tracts have 4-digit code to them. And they have these population thresholds that you see to the right of census tracts, anywhere from 1,200 to 8,000 in population could be in a census tract, and anywhere from about 480 to 3,200 housing units. But at the Bureau, we'd like to keep the census tracts sort of equal so that you have a comparison that makes sense. You wouldn't want to have a census tract with 1,000 people and then a similar one with 7,000 people. The comparison could be a bit skewed. So there's an optimum size that we say exists for census tracts, and that is about 4,000. When a census tract becomes dense, more populated, we split that census tract. So that, at 5,000, 6,000, we'll consider starting to split it. And how that's split is done, as I said before, we try to do them comparable to size. Size in population, not size in landmass. And when we split a census tract, that 4-digit becomes a 4-digit with a decimal point. So whenever you see a census tract that has a decimal point, you know that that census tract has been split. And in large areas like in New York, like in Boston, you can see census tracts that have been split 3 times, 5 times. I've seen some in New York that have been split more than 10 times because of the density issues. The land mass is not growing, but high rises are going up, and that impacts the size of that census tract. So that's our census tract. And right underneath our census tract are our block groups. And as you can see to the left, our block groups have anywhere from 600 to 3,000 in population, and anywhere from 240 to 120 housing units. And so block groups are massed together and are nested inside of the census tract. And then, as I said before, the lowest geography that you see on this chart is your census block. It is the lowest geography, and data for it is only produced during the time of the decennial. So if you're looking for any block data from the American Community Survey, it will be non-existent because we don't produce that kind of data. So this is a way that you can get a sense of understanding of some of our geography. You know, we start collecting the data at the lowest point and start building up until we can give you a complete picture of the nation. And on this next slide, what I'm going to show is how this geography nests within each other. So in this census geography, you can see here on the right side, the census block, 3001 with its boundaries. So that's the census block that we collect data and produce data for during a decennial. That census block joins other blocks, all starting with the same digit. So every block that has a 3 in front of it, you can see by this example, 3001, 3002, 4, 5, come together and they become a block group. And in this case, they're block group 3. And so those block groups come together with other block groups. You can see in this example, there's block group 1 at the upper portion of that census tract. There's block group 2 in sort of the center, block group 3 to the left, and block group 4 to the right. Those block groups become a census tract. And now that census tract is nested into a county. And you can see in this example, you see the census tracts that have been split. This area was census tract 102 at one time. It became quite dense, and now it's 102.1 and 102.2. We have census tract 103, 104, 105, and they all constitute our county. And I want you to remember this because as we start looking for data for Puerto Rico, we're going to start looking at how this nesting actually occurs for us. And now I want to share with you information about the decennial census, the American Community Survey, and the Puerto Rico Community Survey, and we'll talk about some differences amongst the three of them. So this is our American Community Survey. It is what we say at the Bureau, the most reliable and accessible data source for our local statistics here in the United States. And it's current since we produce it every year, so it's quite current for users. We sample about 3.4 million addresses annually. which turns out to be about 290,000 per month. And we produce characteristics of population and housing because we look at both population and housing as well. And then we produce estimates for small areas and small population groups. You'll see that there's a URL at the bottom of this screen. As I'm sharing this with you, URLs are being posted into the chat so that they can become accessible for you. If you look at the right-hand side, the upper right-hand side of the American Community Survey, right below is the actual form. But up above it is what we have, the different estimates that we produce. So we produce a one-year estimate. So what's a one-year estimate? It's 12 months of data collected for geographies that have a population above 65,000. So think, that's going to include all of our states. It's going to include many of our counties. It's going to include some of our large cities. So any geography that has a population above 65,000 is included in your one-year estimate. If you're looking for data on a census tract, you're not going to find it in the one-year estimate because I just told you that that population threshold is about 8,000, and we like to make the optimum 4,000. So you're never going to find it in the one-year estimate. But it does exist. It exists in our 5-year estimate. Our 5-year estimate is a compilation of 60 months of data collected monthly and then but produced annually. And the 5-year estimates include data for all areas. And we do this primarily for one reason. There's probably quite a number, but the one that stands out for me is that whenever you're going to compare a large geography to a smaller geography, you don't want to sort of compare a one-year estimate to a 5-year estimate. Sample sizes are different, and that can skew some of the results that you're publishing. So what we encourage you, we strongly encourage you, is to use the same set of estimates. So in the case of comparing a large geography to a smaller geography, we would recommend using the 5-year estimates. And if you're comparing 2 states, use the 1-year estimate. That's fine to do as well. And in between, we have the 1-year supplemental estimates that you see, and that's for geographies of 20,000 or more. And we produce these every year. The 1-year estimates are produced in September of the year following the collection, and the 5-year estimates are in December of the year following collection. So they're produced, the data is produced and available for your reviews, for your looking at them 1 year after it's collected. So that's what I wanted to point out to you about the American Community Survey. You can actually go to the URL and learn quite a bit more about what we call ACS, the American Community Survey. On this slide, what I wanted to do was give you a slight touch of some of the data that's collected. And you could see we have the population side of the data on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, the housing characteristics. So inside of the population, we have social characteristics, we have demographic characteristics, and we have some economic characteristics. And if you look down this list of social characteristics, you'll see grandparents. And so we ask, are you a grandparent who's responsible for the care of your grandchildren? It's data that we've begun to collect because that phenomenon is occurring within our society. We also ask, what's your ancestry? Do you have a disability? If so, we don't collect the data about a specific disability, but the category of disability. So is it a disability of sight? Is it a disability of hearing? Is it a mobility disability, so that you can get a sense of what disabilities are occurring within that particular geography. You also have demographic data. We'll ask you your age, your race, your Hispanic origin, and your sex, and the relationship to the person who's completed the form. And then some economic data, which is your type of worker, your employment status, health insurance, do you have it or do you not have it, and that kind of data. But one of the ones that interests me a lot is the commuting data. So we ask you, how do you commute to work? Do you use public transportation or do you drive? And then if you drive, do you drive alone or do you carpool? And if you carpool, how many people in the carpool? 2 people, 3 people, 4 people. We start to really give you a picture of what's going on. That data is specifically important for planners of transportation as they're looking at traffic patterns within their communities. This data gets to inform that decision. So you can tell people, if you hear anyone say, well, that doesn't really apply to me. So much of the data that we collect actually informs decisions that we have no idea that are being informed by the data that we provided. So it's a way to encourage people to respond to the American Community Survey. And then on the housing side, so the population side will tell you about the people within a particular area. The housing will tell you about the housing stock of that same area. So it'll give us, any cost that you have for housing, mortgages, taxes, like that. Is the housing unit occupied or vacant? Do you own or do you rent it? Quite a bit of information that gets to inform in other look and other view of how communities get impacted by what's occurring for their population and by the housing stock that's available within that community. On this one slide, I wanted to show you the Puerto Rico Community Survey. As I said, it is known in Puerto Rico as la Encuesta sobre la Comunidad de Puerto Rico. We're going to refer to it as the Puerto Rico Community Survey. As I continue, we're not going to give you acronyms. And the Puerto Rico Community Survey, like the American Community Survey, provides data on a yearly basis. It really informs communities about information regarding any change that's been occurring within their geography, so that they can make informed policy decisions. The Puerto Rico Community Survey is part of the American Community Survey. It was actually customized rather than just purely translated and then distributed in Puerto Rico. The Bureau took the time to look at the concepts in the American Community Survey and did they translate for Puerto Rico. And in some instances they didn't, so we customized it for Puerto Rico. And I'll speak to that in a moment. The form, the Puerto Rico Community Survey, is produced in Spanish and English. And some of the data points that we collect, you can see here, ranging from age down to race to disabilities, the same type of data that's collected in the American Community Survey. I would encourage you strongly to go online and learn much more about the American Community Survey that is collected within Puerto Rico. And then here, what I wanted to do, as I said to you, there's some nuanced differences between the American Community Survey and the Puerto Rico Community Survey. And so, the first thing is the color of the form. The American Community Survey is in green, and the Puerto Rico Community Survey is in purple. So that distinguishes them. So if you see, just at a glance, you can know the difference. And also how the survey is printed and distributed. The American Community Survey is distributed and printed in English, but a respondent can request it in Spanish, and that's available. The Puerto Rico Community Survey is printed and distributed in Spanish, and a respondent could request it in English. So we satisfy the needs of the respective communities and then allow them to ask for it in another language. Data collection also differs a bit. Here with the American Community Survey here in the United States, we collect data electronically, by internet, we do it by mail, or we do it because there's someone who does an in-person follow-up. And so there's 3 opportunities that you have to respond to the American Community Survey. The Puerto Rico Community Survey only has 2 methods. We do not have the collection of data at the internet availability, so we only collect it by mail or in person. I don't know, just in case anyone's thinking, if there's any thought right now to making the internet a possibility for the Puerto Rico Community Survey. The other thing is the sample size. The American Community Survey sample size, as I said before, is about 3.5 million addresses. And the Puerto Rico Community Survey is much smaller. It's 36,000 addresses throughout the island. And then there's some population control methods that we use for both of them. And you can learn more about those, as I said, by visiting this website and learning as much as you can about the nuanced differences of both these surveys, the American Community Survey, as well as the Puerto Rico Community Survey. What I wanted to do in this slide is provide you with the difference between an American Community Survey and a Puerto Rico Community Survey and how it's different from a census. And so, you know, if you look at the purpose of an American Community Survey or a Puerto Rico Community Survey are that we produce estimates, whereas in a census, it's an official count. We'll say there are 265 people in X geography, whereas for the American Community Survey, we'll say there's an estimate of, 400 people in this geography, and then we'll give you the range. And so it'll fall any place between that range. What we collect for the American Community Survey and Puerto Rico Community Survey are that detailed social, economic, and housing characteristics, which we then provide in those rich data sets that are available. A census gives us basic information. There are only 10 questions on the census form. Your age, your name, your race, your address, and then those are tabulated, and we give you that data. What we produce in the American Community Survey, as well as the Puerto Rico Community Survey, are population and housing characteristics. And we can actually start to track trends and comparisons based on our yearly producing of the data. In the census, all we provide is the population and housing totals. The year we produce the ACS and PRCS, as I said before, every single year, either in a 1-year estimate or a 5-year estimate. In a census, we produce that data every 10 years. So you can see the difference of having and the value of having ACS data, the American Community Survey data, or Puerto Rico Community Survey data yearly, because we can really begin to look at changes rather than waiting 10 years and seeing some of that change over that 10-year span. And then, as I said before, it's a period in time. In a census, it's a point in time. The question is, were you living at this address on April 1st of the respective census year? for the American Community Survey, and for the Puerto Rico Community Survey, it's a 1 year and a 5 year points in time that the data gets reflected in. And these are some of the trends that one can sort of look to, so we can, look at how the population is aging. We could look at health insurance coverage by age. Is that increasing? Is that decreasing? Is it staying the same? We can look at populations 65 and older who are living alone. Does that merit some attention? And if you look on the other side, we can look at grandparents as caregivers, and we're going to look at a data point about grandparents as caregivers. We'll look at the number of children living in poverty. So these are some of the trends that you can track observing American Community Survey data as well as Puerto Rico Community Survey data. So let's look at data tools and data resources. So this, by no stretch of the imagination, is the extent of our data tools, but I wanted to highlight some data tools where you can go and access data about Puerto Rico, right? And so we'll look at Quick Facts, we'll look at Explore Census data known as data.census.gov. We'll look at the Census Survey Explorer, which I think is a pretty neat tool, and we'll look at the historical apportionment map. There's a Census Business Builder and the Census Academy, and we'll hear much more about that as we go on. Let me show you census.gov. That is the landing page of our Census Bureau. So you'll see it in census.gov. This is what it looks like. If you're looking for data tools, you'll click on Explore Data. This drop down will show up, and then you click on Data Tools and Applications, which then gives you a view of the data tools that we have. In that same page, census.gov, you can actually go to Quick Facts. Quick Facts is a place that, just by its name, you can tell that, oh, this is 1 or 2 clicks and you can get some data. You'll get some data from different surveys that we have, and you could look at 6 geographies across the screen and compare them. It's only available for geographies that have 5,000 or more in population. We're going to go and visit this one because we're going to retrieve data from Puerto Rico and compare it to some of the municipios within Puerto Rico. This is our data.census.gov, Explore Census Data. It is our, I think, our largest retrieval of data tool that we have, and we keep building upon it. We probably released this, I want to say, nearly 2 years ago. It might have been longer, but and we built it up gradually. So we keep uploading former data vintages so that you can access quite a bit of data from data.census.gov. There are 2 ways to search, and I'm going to show you that in the next screen. The first one is a single search, sort of like a Microsoft, and then you'll get some data if those terms resonate for the system. But, the thing about the single search is that you can get 1 data point and 1 geography, as distinct from the advanced search, which lets you select several geographies and several data points. We're going to go on this one as well. On this next screen, you're going to see what the advanced search looks like, and you can select from any one of these filters and start building up your data query. Census Survey Explorer, I think it's a pretty neat tool, but then again, I don't find very many of the tools that are not neat within the Census Bureau. But this one, what it does is you're able to put in a data point. In this case, I put Hispanic children, And what this tool does, it'll scan our surveys and then select where you can find data on Hispanic children. And it returned to me 3 surveys: the American Community Survey, the American Housing Survey, and the Puerto Rico Community Survey. I'm going to show you this online so that you can get a sense of the breadth of search that it does and how it helps you begin that search for data. And then this is a decennial historical apportionment data map. Apportionment does not pertain to Puerto Rico, but the population map does. And what you can do is, at a glance, see population changes from the 1910 census all the way up to the 2020 census. And you can actually see density as well. And so when we go online, I'm going to demonstrate that for you. What you can see on this one is this reflects to us all of the population changes in Puerto Rico from 1910 to 2020. And then we have narrative profiles from the American Community Survey. We produce narrative profiles, statistics, data points that are of interest to particular geographies. This is well received by people who are producing grant proposals, writing them, or actual reports. You can extract some of this data and put it into your report or your request for a proposal. And they mostly show up as the top 2 sort of bar graphs, if you will. In this case, I looked at poverty rates in Puerto Rico from 2016 to 2020. That's your 2020 ACS 5-year estimate. And on the right-hand side, that's your educational attainment of people in Puerto Rico again. But every once in a while, we'll get a data point that's in a narrative form, no graph. And I pulled this one out because I found it quite interesting. And this is about grandparents and grandchildren. So in Puerto Rico, between that span of time, 2016 to 2020, 81,254 grandparents live with their grandchildren under 18 years old. Okay, so that was interesting. But then the next point was that of those grandparents, of those 81,000 grandparents, 36.1%, or a little bit over 29,000, were responsible for the basic needs of their grandchildren. Now that begs the question, are there any services available to provide to grandparents? Interesting. And if you're making that case, this is a great data point to point to. So the narrative profiles, I think, are a great place for one to go to get some data that you can include in reports or in documents that you are writing and justifying a request. And then lastly, this is not a data census tool, but it is the tool of our state data center in Puerto Rico. As the Census Bureau, we have state data centers in every single one of the states, and they're our partners. They're really, really close partners in disseminating data, informing people about data, informing people about the importance of the census, importance of the American Community Survey. So they're highly engaged, and we have the same type of relationship in Puerto Rico with the Instituto de Estadística in Puerto Rico. And this is their homepage. I wanted to demonstrate this one to you because this one will actually give you some written documentation in Spanish if that's what you prefer, and then you can toggle to English if that's what you prefer. It's quite an informative page of what our census data partner is doing in Puerto Rico with the data that we produce. This is a way to get in touch with me. This is not a should not be the last time that we chat. If you leave this webinar and have a question that you want to ask, you might want to contact me, and there's my email, ana.maria.garcia@census.gov, or my phone number, 860-424-6762. If for some reason you could not get a hold of me, you can reach out to census.askdata@census.gov, or call that 1-844-ASK-DATA number, and someone will gather the information that you have about a question that you have, and then match you with a data dissemination specialist. We aim to keep everyone as informed as possible about the data that we have and how you can access it. I want to, in closing, give out what I call a shout out to the Academy. Our Academy is growing and growing and growing. It started with data gems, little short vignettes of how to do certain things within data access. And so if you want to know how to get a census tract, you can look at a data gem, and it'll tell you how to do that, how to find some redistricting data. It'll tell you how to do that without attending a complete webinar. There are also development of courses that are being made available through the Census Academy. I believe our first one is a geography course. As you can tell, geography is quite important to us. And then there's these webinars. This is a Census Academy sponsored webinar, and there's quite a number of them, and quite a number of them being planned for the future. If you want to request one, there's a form that you complete, answer some questions, and then it gets routed to a data dissemination specialist, and then we start the process of developing a webinar for you. What I want to emphasize is all of these are free of charge. This is our way of saying thank you for giving us the data, and we are now making it available to you. And then lastly, I just want to say thank you. And as we say in Spanish, gracias. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your interest. And now what I want to do is briefly a live demonstration of some of the tools that I mentioned earlier. So let me stop sharing. And let me go to my first. And here what you're going to see is this is the home page of the Census Bureau. And, you know, this page alone would take us a complete webinar to go through it. We're not going to do that. But what I do want to do is scroll down a bit and go to Quick Facts. And in Quick Facts, what you get is this is the page. And as you see, the default geography is the United States. But I'm interested in Puerto Rico. So I type in Puerto Rico, and we should get. And what comes up is telling us that since they're coming from two different separate data sets, we're not going to be able to compare them. So I'm going to say OK, and it's going to switch my United States to Puerto Rico. But now I want to look at some geography within Puerto Rico. So I'm going to choose Ay Bonito Municipio. You can have the zona urbana or the municipio. I'm going to choose el municipio. And what happens now is you have a comparison side by side of Puerto Rico and Ay Bonito. And then I'm going to choose Mayagüez. Again, you get a drop down. I'm going to choose Mayagüez, and it comes on. You can get up to 6 geographies and compare them across. And you can get, you can select a fact. So here I'm going to look for those 3 geographies that I chose. I want to see what's the percent of children under 5. So I'm going to click on that. And what that does, it brings up prominent first line that data point. So you don't have to scroll through the entire data set because you can see there's quite a bit of data here. But we not only bring it to the top, we also highlight it in the body of the data. And you can see there's quite a bit of data. If you wanted to look at the 2010 census data compared to the 2020, you could do that because that data is available. So this is, as the title suggests, quick facts. It's a quick way with 1 or 2 clicks of getting some data about geography that we have and data that we have for Puerto Rico. I'm now going to stop sharing this and go to my next share, which is data.census.gov. And on this page, you can see this is the home page of data.census.gov, and you can see that we have the single search, as you saw in the PowerPoint, and we have an advanced search. If you did a single search, we can say Puerto Rico population. Come on, it's Puerto Rico, Ana Maria. And so I'm going to search for that, and it should pull for me some data, and it has. And then you also see on the right side of the screen that it's going to give you a Puerto Rico profile. Whenever you're selecting a geography, it'll always pull up a profile for you. And so what the profile does will highlight for you some important data points. Come on. I'm going to stop sharing this. Come on. I'm going to share. So what it would do, I'm not even going to attempt to do that. If you scroll down, it gives us the population, it would give us the median household income, it would give us poverty rates, and so on, and quite a bit of those data points. So just by clicking on that geography, you can get some data available for the geography that you've selected. I'm going to stop sharing this, and then I want to share with you our historical map that I showed you before. And in this tool, what you can do is you can see this is the apportionment map side, but none of this is available for Puerto Rico. So what you would get is you'd click on population map, and then all of a sudden over here, Puerto Rico would be available. But this is not responding right now. So if this occurs to you, what I would say is refresh the page, and then you can try to retrieve the data again. So I apologize for it not responding. But as you saw on the slide, you could get quite a bit of data. And so what I want to do now is, these last, 7 or 8 minutes, leave for any questions that you might have that were either not answered in the chat or that have just popped into your head. So do we have any questions, Noelia or Carol?
I have one question. Hi, Ana Maria. I have one question pending from Laura Hales. She wants to know, are the Puerto Rico data population estimates? If so, is there somewhere she can get the raw data plus the weights for research and to do population estimates herself?
I'm sure that there's. Oh, I'm so sorry that there's a reverberating echo. I'm sure there is. If you can have her put her information of how I can reach out to her, we'll definitely do that, and I'll give her the URL so she can do that.
Ana Maria, this is Carol.
Uh-huh.
Yasmin would like to, could you just run through a real quick demonstration of how to download any of these data tables or the maps?
Yeah, let's see if I get responses from this. I'm
Yes.
going to go. Right, let me just see if I can go to data.census.gov, a page that has the link on it that will take me there. Let me see. Those are workshops. This one might be it. I want to do an advanced search. So I'm hoping that this will give me, I want to use geography. I'm going to select state because I'm going to look for Puerto Rico. It's the closest type geography that we have to Puerto Rico. So I'm going to select Puerto Rico. I'm then going to select some other geography. And I'm going to select county. And where do I want those counties from? I want them from Puerto Rico. And then what this is going to list for you, you can do all the counties in Puerto Rico. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to choose one, Arecibo. And then we see here Puerto Rico and Arecibo, and then I'm going to select a topic that I want, and I want to get some information. And these are our topics. We'll look at information on education, and I'm going to look at educational attainment for both of those areas. Okay, so this is educational attainment. I should hit search. And this is going to give me one of the tables. So what you get to see here is that you can download this data, okay, into Excel. So I'm just, it's Puerto Rico here. If I scroll across, you're going to get the other geography, Arecibo. I'm going to download it to Excel. So for the person who asked the question, you would download the table that you have into an Excel format. It would show up on my computer. It shows up at the bottom left-hand screen in an Excel format. And then you can save it and then manipulate it the way you can do an Excel spreadsheet. So you can remove columns, remove rows, and only have the data that you want. So you can customize it for your use. But yes, you can download the data. And I'm sorry that it's not giving us high performance right now.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Any other questions? If there are none, we're 1 minute over. I want to thank everyone for your attention and beg your forgiveness for taking an extra minute of your time. I'm passing it over back to you, Yara.
Thank you, Ana Maria. That was a great presentation, and we really like to thank everyone who played a role in today's webinar. And also, of course, thank you, the audience, for spending time with us this afternoon. Please take a moment to fill out the evaluation by following the link that we're providing to you in the chat. We hope that you let us know not only what we can improve on, but what you really enjoy from the session. So look out for the recording and the PowerPoint presentation on Census Academy by visiting census.gov/academy. And we also want to remind you that we have another webinar specifically on Puerto Rico, but this time it's going to be in Spanish on Thursday, June 9th, this Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So this will bring us to a close. We thank you again, and we hope you have a great afternoon.